Hello, fourth graders. Today you will start your final tour of the United States with touring the Western region. This will be a van and airplane tour of the West. And a question you'll be able to answer at the end is, what are the features that have drawn people to the West? So looking at this map here, you can see that the West is a very large region, not only including these states here, but also the ones that are not attached to that part of the West. So we have Alaska way up here, and it will be way up in the northwestern area attached to Canada. And then we have the Hawaiian Islands out in the Pacific Ocean. This map is found on page 185 of your Social Studies textbook. The dots on the map show places you will visit on our tour of the West. So you will be visiting Los Angeles, Leadville in Colorado, Yellowstone National Park, Lola Pass in Montana, Tacoma, Washington, the Columbia River, Gorge National Scenic Area, and Anchorage, Alaska. This collage is found on page 184 in your textbook. Maybe you have seen some of these places before. Maybe you've actually been to some of these places before. In this lesson, you will be mapping the sites that we visit in the West as we tour. Just going to get to our correct page here. So the map that you will be keeping track of, our sites, will be found on page 102 of your workbook. So right now, I would like you to listen as we listen to our tour guide, Ms. Yoshida, as we begin our tour of the West. Again, this is found on page 185.
Aloha! My name is Ms. Yoshida.
Aloha! My name is Ms. Yoshida. I will be your guide for our tour of the West. I was born and raised in Hawaii. As you probably can tell from my greeting, the word aloha is used for hello in the Hawaiian language. We also use it to say goodbye. I am a college student here on the mainland. My main interests are political science and government. Someday, I hope to win election to the United States Congress. On school breaks, I work as a tour guide. It's a great job. I get to meet all kinds of people while seeing beautiful places. Whenever we visit someplace new, I want you to think about two questions. What first attracted people to this place? And why are people still coming here today? For most of our tour, we will travel in vans, but we will also fly in an airplane to 2 stops. Did you hear that honk? That means it's time for us to hit the road.
All right, once again, as we move from site to site on the tour, you will use the map in your Social Studies workbook on page 102 to draw the route, to label the different sites, and to draw a symbol to show what you learned there. Site 1 on our tour is an old cabin along the Lewis and Clark Trail. This is on page 188 in your textbook.
Our first stop is Lola Pass in the Rocky Mountains. A pass is a route across mountains. In 1805, a group of 35 very hungry Americans crossed this pass. The Americans were part of an expedition led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, An expedition is a journey with a purpose. The Lewis and Clark expedition had 2 goals. The first was to find an all-water route from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. The travelers failed because such a route does not exist. Their second goal was to explore the lands west of the Mississippi. This Lewis and Clark did very well. Their maps and journals gave Americans their first good look at the region we now call the West. When Lewis and Clark reached Lola Pass, they were almost out of food. All they had left was a soup mix that everybody hated. The men survived by eating candles, bear oil, and 2 of their horses. Today, people come to this part of Montana to hike and fish. Some come to follow the Lewis and Clark Trail to the Pacific. Luckily for these travelers, they don't have to eat candles or that awful soup to survive.
All right, so it is time to pause your video to label Lola Pass in Montana on your map to draw a picture. And remember, you can always look back to page 185 so that you can see where the sites are located. Site 2 on our tour is Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park.
Lewis and Clark saw a lot of sights on their expedition, but they missed the geysers of Yellowstone National Park. A geyser is a spring that shoots hot water and steam into the air. Geysers are sometimes called nature's tea kettles. Water is heated deep inside the earth. When the water gets hot enough, it hisses and boils just like a tea kettle on a stove. What happens when this boiling water reaches the Earth's surface? It shoots into the air. There are about 10,000 hot springs, mud volcanoes, steam vents, and geysers in Yellowstone. A geyser named Old Faithful erupts in a cloud of steam every 30 to 90 minutes. Fur trappers were some of the first Americans to see Yellowstone. No one believed their stories of steaming springs. Later on, a photographer took pictures of the geysers. People were impressed with the photographs. Many people wanted to protect the geysers and the beautiful land around them from development. In 1872, the U.S. government created Yellowstone National Park to do just that. It was the first national park in the world. Only 300 people visited Yellowstone the year it became a park. But today, the park is very popular. Over 3 million people come to Wyoming to visit Yellowstone each year. Visitors enjoy the beauty of Yellowstone's mountains and meadows.
Please pause the video here to put Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming on your map. All right, also please remember to trace the route, so connecting Lola Pass to Yellowstone National Park. Site 3 in our tour is an old mine in Leadville, Colorado.
Welcome to historic Leadville, Colorado. We are looking at the entrance to an old mine. Leadville sits high in the Rocky Mountains. At 10,200 feet, it is one of our country's highest cities. In the past, it was also the West's wildest and richest silver mining town. Miners first came to this area looking for gold. They found some, but it was hard to separate the gold from the local sand. In 1878, a mineral expert took a closer look at that pesky sand. Guess what he found? The sand was rich in both lead and silver. the discovery of silver brought good times to Leadville. The city grew rapidly as miners flocked to the area. Then, in 1893, the silver boom ended. For a time, it looked as though Leadville would become an empty ghost town. But Leadville was lucky. Other valuable minerals were found in this area. One is molybdenum. This metal is used to make high-strength steel. The town survived. Today, Leadville is a tourist center. Some people come to learn about the history of this rich mining area. Others come to ski in winter or fish and hike in summer.
All right, so now it is time to put Leadville, Colorado on your map, connecting Lola Pass. Yellowstone National Park to Leadville, Colorado. Drawing a symbol. And then we will move on. Whoops, we need to go past this minor song here. We're moving on to Site 5, which is sunny Southern California's movie industry. This is on page 191 of your textbook.
Watch your step. Look down at your feet and you will see stars set into the sidewalk. We are walking down Hollywood Boulevard. On this street, special movie, television, and music stars are honored with a star and their names placed in the sidewalk. This street in Los Angeles, California, is one of the most famous streets in the world. Movie making is a giant industry in Southern California. America's first movies were made in the Northeast. But movie makers needed sunny days to film outdoors. The Northeast is often cloudy and rainy. A few movie makers found the sunshine they needed in Southern California. Others soon followed. Today, thousands of people in Southern California work in the movie industry. Some work as writers, actors, set designers, and directors. Many more people work in jobs that help the movie industry. Some of these workers make costumes and equipment. Others provide important services such as transportation, food, and construction. Each year, millions of tourists visit Southern California and enjoy its warm, sunny weather. Many of these tourists tour the movie studios, hoping to bump into a movie star at the same time.
Okay, so please put LA or Los Angeles on your map, connecting it from Leadville, Colorado. Site 5, or Section 6, is Central Valley in California.
Do you snack on raisins? Spread strawberry jam on your toast? Look around you. Those foods probably came from California's Central Valley. The Central Valley is shaped like a long bathtub. The sides are formed by mountain ranges. The bottom is covered with deep, rich soil. Summers here are long and warm. Does this sound like a good place to farm? It is. But there is a problem. Almost no rain falls during the growing season. California has solved this problem by building dams on rivers that flow down from the mountains. In winter, water collects behind the dams. In the summer, farmers use this water to irrigate crops. Irrigation turned the Central Valley into what people call America's fruit and salad bowl. Farmers here raise more than 300 crops, most of them fruits and vegetables. You probably eat some of them every day. The Central Valley is also a center of farming technology. Technology is the use of tools and ideas to meet people's needs. Scientists here have invented many machines to help farmers pick their crops. One is a tomato picking machine. It must be gentle so it won't crush the tomatoes. Scientists tested this machine with eggs. The machine can pick up an egg and pack it in a box without breaking the egg.
Okay. Again, pause your video to draw the Central Valley of California on your map. And our next stop is the Columbia River Gorge.
We have reached the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. A gorge is a deep, narrow valley with steep walls. The Columbia River cut this beautiful gorge out of rock. The Columbia River begins in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. It flows 1,200 miles south and west into the Pacific Ocean. For part of its journey, the river forms the boundary between the states of Washington and Oregon. The Columbia looks lazy here, but don't let that fool you. This is one hard-working river. Dams on the river make a lot of electricity. Many businesses use this electric power, and farmers use water from the river to irrigate crops. Columbia River waters irrigate more than 8 million acres of land. Farmers and business people use the river for transportation. Many goods travel on the Columbia to shipping centers. It is one of the most traveled rivers in the country. Putting the river to work has been good for people. Both Oregon and Washington are growing rapidly. But the use of the river has been bad for fish, especially salmon. Since 1850, the number of salmon in the Columbia River has dropped sharply. Do you know why? You'll find out during our stop at the gorge.
Okay, fourth graders, so once you have put the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area on your map, right up near Washington and Oregon, I would like you to turn in your textbook to page 194, where we will be visiting a sawmill in Tacoma, Washington.
Welcome to Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma was founded 150 years ago as a logging town. Today, Tacoma is still a center of the wood products industry. Wood products include lumber, plywood, cardboard, and paper. Let's visit a sawmill in Tacoma. There are two things I like about touring a sawmill. The first is watching giant saws turn logs into lumber. The second is the smell of freshly sawed wood. What I don't like is the noise. Every time a saw cuts into a log, it makes a screaming sound. When that happens, you may want to cover your ears. Can you guess how much wood the average American uses each year? Over a ton. A lot of that wood is in the paper we use. 681 pounds of paper per person. All that wood equals one 100-foot-tall tree, 18 inches thick, for each American every year. Much of that wood comes from the West. In the 1800s, forests attracted loggers and lumbermen to this region. The mountains of the West were covered with forests. Today, many Westerners still work in the lumber industry. We are heading now for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. We'll take a plane to our next stop.
Please pause your video here to put Tacoma, Washington on your map. Site 8 is the start of the Iditarod in Anchorage, Alaska. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Balto, but it is a great movie, which kind of is the storyline of how the Iditarod started in Alaska.
We are in Anchorage, Alaska. Alaska is by far the largest of the 50 states, yet it has one of the lowest populations of any state. Can you guess why? One reason is its chilly climate. Alaska is farther from the equator than any other state. This makes Alaska our coldest state. Its winters are so cold that car door handles can freeze and snap off in your hand. People have been attracted to Alaska by its resources. In 1898, gold was discovered near the town of Nome. Within 2 years, Nome grew to more than 20,000 people. Another rush of people came in the 1960s. That was when oil was discovered in northern Alaska. Today, many people come to Alaska to enjoy its open spaces and outdoor activities. A favorite sport here is dog sled racing. Alaskans used to depend on dog sleds to get around in winter. Now they use airplanes and snowmobiles. The most famous dog sled race is the Iditarod, held each year in March. The Iditarod begins right here in Anchorage. It ends 1,150 miles away in Nome. A few teams of dogs and their mushers, or drivers, cover that distance in an amazing 9 to 12 days. No wonder Alaskans call this event the last great race on Earth.
Right after you have put Anchorage, Alaska on your map, we will be moving on to our final site. What an extreme, from Alaska to Hawaii. We'll be visiting Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii. This is page 196 of your textbook.
Step out of the airplane into the warm sunshine. You have just flown from our country's coldest state to one of its warmest. Hawaii lies closer to the equator than any other U.S. state. Its climate is sunny and warm all year round. Look at beautiful Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii. I grew up near here. My father gave me my first surfing lessons at Waikiki. Maybe I'll have a chance to teach you how to surf here. Today, tourists from all over the world enjoy the sunny beach. Tourism is Hawaii's most important industry. But it wasn't always such a big deal. 100 years ago, the main industry on the Hawaiian Islands was raising sugarcane. Hawaii's sugar planters needed lots of workers for their plantations. Those workers came from China, Japan, the Philippines, Portugal, and other places. My great-great-grandparents came to Hawaii from Japan around 1890. They planned to work in the sugar fields for a few years and then return home. But they liked Hawaii and decided to stay. My grandfather remembers when jet airplanes began flying to Hawaii. That was in the late 1950s. Airplanes made it easier for tourists to come to Hawaii. Today, many jobs in Hawaii are related to tourism.
All right, please pause
So we
the
are
video
very
for
happy
one
that you
last
are
time
visiting our islands.
to put Honolulu, Hawaii on your map. And then we will listen to the summary found on page 197 of your textbook.
What an awesome tour! We began high in the Rocky Mountains and ended up on Waikiki Beach. Along the way, we saw sights in 8 states. What was your favorite stop? The mine entrance in Leadville? Southern California? The Columbia River? Can you guess mine? It's Waikiki Beach, of course. Remember the 2 questions I asked when we began our tour? What first attracted people to the West? And why are people still coming here today? Here are my answers to the first question. People first came to the West in search of adventure, opportunity, and sunshine. The West had beautiful places to explore. It had valuable natural resources. These resources included furs, gold, silver, oil, and forests. And it had a climate that attracted farmers and movie makers. My answers to the second question are the same. People still come to the West for adventure, opportunity, and sunshine. The adventures have changed. We now hike and ski in the region where Lewis and Clark once almost starved. The opportunities have changed too. Today, there are many jobs in the tourism and entertainment industries. But the sunshine is the same, warm and bright. I hope you had fun in the sun on our trip. Aloha!